getting Canadian usos to do one back for us, Doctor.
Okay.
Fascism, Marxism, totalitarianism, Canada, oh Canada, nothing much good rhymes with communism. Elitism, globalism, government-sponsored journalism. Oh, Canada, oh, Canada, nothing much good rhymes with communism. Captivity is a surety in a 15-minute city. Canada, oh Canada,
Oh, Canada.
you don't want to live under communism.
I don't know what he's gonna do, or where he's really planning to go. But I do know that nothing right but true.
The man in the hat is a Canadian Newton.
Hiding, lying, the fundamental skills of constantly complying. Canada, oh Canada, nothing much good rhymes. Communism with communism. Gastro, Monsanto, two words that rhyme with Castro. Canada, nothing much good rhymes with communism. Communism. Liberty, creativity, exploring your humanity. Canada, oh Canada, you can kiss that all goodbye under communism.
I know that you know what you gotta do. It's either gonna be him or you, or nothing will ever rhyme with Trudeau.
Hi, Doc.
Beautifully performed by your lovely singer. Beautiful.
Yeah,
And the band backup
way
too.
to start. But look, it's an honor to have you on. We've been watching you now for a few years as you don't hold anything back. My guest, my co-host is Dr. Paul Oosterhuis, and Dr. Paul was the first doctor to be suspended for questioning. Oh, it's still playing. How do I stop it? Sorry.
Yes, I was the first target for calling out the gag order against doctors. I said radical things like natural immunity, like early treatment, vitamin D's, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin. I said lockdowns didn't work. There was no evidence for lockdowns, no evidence for masks. And I said that these shots were not vaccinations. They were, synthetic gene therapies. And anyway, they didn't like that because that might cause hesitancy. So, they suspended me in September 2021. So I've been on this path for a while. But I did take them to the Supreme Court of New South Wales and argued against them without a lawyer. And I got lucky. There were some rulings that came in my favor and they dropped my suspension. But I could never go back to this bunch of deluded, colleagues of mine. They still had vaccine mandates in my hospitals. And I was an anesthesiologist and critical care doctor for 32 years. So that's where I come from. I was brought up in a culture of safety, like in the airline industry, where, you would spot, you see something, you say something, so you see risks, you call it out, and, before it becomes a serious incident. And I love the art of medicine, not just the science and technical, but the element of creativity, in dealing with each individual patient, and I could see that was being stripped away from medicine. So I tweeted a few weeks ago that the first casualty of COVID was medicine, the profession.
And it was intended to be. It was intended to be, and it was done very efficiently. I have a background which put me in touch with a lot of anesthesiologists over the years. I was an emergency physician for 15 to 20 years. Certainly we're thrilled when you guys would show up when certain things were requiring you, although we did a lot of the initial intubations and the like, that was our job.
Yes.
And so certainly a pleasure to see you, Paul. I know that you were, as it were, being... your actions would have produced death vax hesitancy. They didn't want death vax hesitancy, did they?
His first thing that he did wrong was he posted a meme questioning the narrative. And in Australia with APRA, if you post a meme questioning the narrative, it puts you in the same ballpark as Mengele. That's basically it. That's how insane it's been here. There's the Hippocratic Oath was the first casualty of this thing. But I want to vote you. Can I just get background on you?
Please.
So you said what you're doing. So where were you working? What got you into medicine? I'm just really interested in the background of someone that's come from where you've come from to who you are now. So, what got you into medicine? What was your driving force behind it?
Well, I graduated from high school and applied for what was called a pre-med program and got straight into that. With my marks, which were pretty sharp coming out of high school, that was fine, and I was accepted and into Queen's University Medical School, Kingston, Ontario, Canada. After the 2 pre-med years, I was then entering medicine at the age of 19. I graduated from high school 17, started medicine at 19.
Were you a really hard studier, or you just naturally had the gift?
Oh, you have to have both. I mean, you can't have a gift and learn things. You have to study. We were just students, and we quickly studied in the pre-med program. You had to re-qualify to go into medicine. So at age 19 and a half, I went into medical school for the 4 years, graduated just before my 24th birthday, and I've been working at it for 47 years. That's me.
Incredible. So what happened with this COVID thing? What was the first thing that made you go, hang on, what the hell's happening?
Well, I wasn't as early knowledgeable as many people would be. Let's say people who'd had vaccine injuries in their families already and were sensitized to those issues. Or people who were simply a little bit more doubting of authority informations. And that wasn't me. I thought that everything that was in a journal was properly vetted and described, and it would be weeded out and decided upon based upon different opinions, but that ultimately the cream would come to the top. The good stuff would be what was really published in the journals, and we could trust it. Certainly within a year or so of something being discussed, it would be all figured out. But it wasn't until James O'Keefe came out in early 2022 when I saw that without question, Anthony Fauci had been directive of all of the research that led to this. Not only was he directive of the research that created the germ and effectively, therefore, secondarily created the vax, he also, again, early in 2021, he started to give information when challenged that, oh no, it couldn't possibly have come from a lab, when in fact, as James O'Keefe showed us and others, it did come from a lab, and it came from a lab that Fauci had sent materials to, and some Fauci had received evidences back from. So once I saw that the fox was in the henhouse, once I saw that the principal advisor to the President of the United States and essentially to the world was the right thing to do, was the jackass who actually made it along with Peter Daszak and others, I became fully awake on that day in early January of 2022.
What was that moment like, to actually see that? Because, I mean, you're giving so much to profession. I think like Dr. Oosterhuis here, you're probably proud to be doctors. There's great purpose to your life. And suddenly you're realizing, whoa, they're betraying everything. What was that moment like?
Oh, it was tough. It was, but I immediately had to get secondary backup. I wasn't going to take just a journalist point of view on this one specific topic that got me highly engaged. But I went to Dr. Mark Trozzi's website here in Canada in early 2022 and started to learn what he'd been saying for a year and a half. And when I learned what he had learned, and when I went on to learn what McCullough and others in the United States who were wonderful on these topics, and but McCullough in particular, he and Zelenko had the truth. They said all you need is a little bit of hydroxychloroquine, some zinc ionophores, some zinc itself, some vitamin D3, be aggressive with these things, also pop in a little broad spectrum antibiotic, and you won't even go near the hospital. The cure was sitting there in March, April of 2020 itself. 2020, the cure was there from the Didier Raoult in France. And Pierre Corey in the States was the other gentleman I wanted to mention. So Pierre Corey, Peter McCullough, and others flew with it. And Pierre Corey's written a wonderful book about the banning of ivermectin, and we can get into that too. But I mean, it's a lot to feel sad about, because of the millions of people who died around the world, 95% of them didn't have to die. They could have been given ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine in the first weeks of symptomatology, and they would not have gotten near the hospital. That's what real doctors had figured out within 2 months of the beginning of this flamdemic. Yeah. And
Dr. Chris,
agencies shut down the doctors, beginning with you, Dr. Paul Oosterhuis.
Dr. Chris, I watched the same MedCram episode in March of 2020 as Dr. Zelenko did. The one he credited is going, aha, we have a strategy to treat it with zinc and zinc ionophores, hydroxychloroquine, quercetin, and the like. Yep. And so for the next year and 2 years, I just walked around everywhere. Have you heard of hydroxychloroquine? Have you heard of ivermectin? I gave scripts to my friends and said, here, take this with some zinc. You don't have to be fearful. And so I was fighting the fear, and I thought, look, just with some simple information, we can avoid. We didn't need to be fearful. And yet there were. I could see a terrible fear campaign being waged on the Australians, and I could see that we'd not learned all the mistakes that had happened in America in 2020. And I thought, here's an opportunity. Tell everyone to take vitamin D. Tell them to take hydroxy, ivermectin. And they don't zinc, and they don't need to be fearful. And that's what they initially attacked me for. So this is where but I didn't have a platform. I wasn't I only only came on the register when the regulators chose to attack me or attack my registration. So it's been quite a ride, and I'm still doing it. I'm still getting out the word about early treatment. I think all the vaccinated people on the planet should be on prophylaxis now, because if Gert van den Bosch is right about the interplay between the vaccinated immune system and this evolving coronavirus, they may be in trouble. One of the insights I had back in 2020 was that you needed to give it early. That almost anything you gave early enough was going to work much better than if you left it day 4, day 5, day 6. And now I think we have to give it prophylactically. If Gert van den Bosch is right, I would like to see everyone get a quick scabies treatment stat, so that they have some.
No, they don't allow scabies treatment here in Ontario. You can give these medicines, ivermectin, to a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 9-year-old with scabies, and you can get rid of it, and the pharmacy will honor the prescription. If they have even a whiff that it's for a respiratory condition, or a whiff that it's for a suspicion of COVID on the part of the mother who convinced the doctor to write the prescription will not be honored. The pharmacy will not give that medication to that parent. They might have a dead child on their hands a week later, because Ontario and Canada's pharmacies will not release these medications to our citizens. This is the fight we're having. It's obscene. It's absolutely obscene. And I welcome any other questions from Michael and yourself.
Well, this is what I want to ask. Just going back to the start. So you woken up, you're joining the small group of doctors who are risking their career by speaking out. What was it like facing the apathy of your colleagues and basically the barrage of attacks you would have got from the government and everyone else? Like, suddenly here you are, 19, you start becoming a doctor. Obviously, you know what you're talking about, and yet probably overnight they're calling you a crackpot idiot and this. What was it like suddenly facing the slings and arrows?
Because it was merged and because it wasn't right in day one, I never for a moment thought myself as either a crackpot or an idiot. For the first 2 years, I was working in a government clinic, doing what the government let us do. Telling people to quietly under my breath, be sure you're up on your vitamin D. Be sure that you're doing the appropriate things that are nutraceutical for yourself. But the official prescribing, I was in no way allowed in that Ontario-based clinic to actually prescribe those medicines. I knew the minute that I prescribed one of those medicines, my job was gone. I didn't fully understand in the early days how terribly obscene and how it was that these things were being banned, but I just knew that I'd better not breathe it. For that 1 year that I worked in the COVID clinics, I quietly told people about nutraceutical measures that they could do, but it didn't appear on the medical record. However, after I left that clinic, I had worked in a COVID clinic for 1.5 years, never gotten sick myself, took no medications myself, healthy as a horse. Hey, I worked in emergency for 40 years. Never caught a germ that really knocked me out for much. Never took a flu shot my whole life. Why would I? I was under 65 for most of my working life, and since 65, and I'm over that now, what do I need a flu shot that has about a 20% effectiveness rate and actually proved out that people who've taken flu shots regularly, Michael, they were the ones who suffered from COVID the most. The ones who had been sensitized and gotten in the previous 20 years flu shots on a regular basis. The more regularly one took the flu shot in the 20 years before COVID hit, there's a statistical difference in the amount of illness and infectivity that those patients had compared to people who had not vaccinated themselves with flu shots in the previous 20 years. This is something that we've just been learning lately.
Astonishing.
But anyway, my general sensitization was keep myself healthy. Just as my working in the COVID clinic wound down, when I was finishing my 14th, 15th month of doing it, that was when I very foolishly, because I still didn't know the toxicity of the jab, I thought it might not help me, but it maybe wouldn't hurt me. I know that they weren't allowing the right medicines, but oh God, I can't go to a coffee shop. I can't go to a hockey game. I can't do anything. I got my nose pressed up against the glass to do anything. I'm a bachelor. I want to have a social life. How the heck do you get out there and just spend time with people? So Trudeau with mandates made enough of a mandate on a fella that I took an initial 2 jabs.
Wow.
I felt pretty sick after the second one. The second one made me pretty nauseated, pretty ill, pretty crummy. And within 15 days of getting my second shot, that was when I got my only case of COVID. I had been COVID-free a year and a half with people coughing and spitting on me and wearing my protective equipment to protect me from these people who were coming to see us and getting our limited advice that we could give. And the limited advice would typically go home, and if you get breathless, well, then go to the hospital. And sadly, once the people did go to the hospital, the malicious protocols took so many of them out. The malicious protocols, which banned antibiotics essentially for this condition. If it was diagnosed COVID and it wasn't a lobar pneumonia with an absolutely classic bacterial pneumonia, lobar pneumonia, it was anything but lobar pneumonia, you couldn't give a treatment. You couldn't give an antibiotic, and you were also being discouraged from giving steroids. Steroids are the sine qua non. They are the major treatment for viral pneumonitis. So there were patients going into hospital with viral pneumonia. It's always been the case to use some element of steroidal anti-inflammatory effect, fairly high doses of steroids in such circumstances, and also almost on speculation, give intravenous antibiotics as well, because it's the secondary infection with bacterial infection that will kill the patient that was in 5 days before they were in emergency. Now they're in the hospital 5 days later. If you haven't started firing a little bit of serious antibiotics to them as well, then they're going to die of a lobar pneumonia or bacterial pneumonia. So everything that used to be used for viral pneumonitis, steroids, and effectively antibiotics as well, they were both banned in stupidity, 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 or it's complicity, complicity, complicity. It's one or the other.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you said, like me, you've been in accident emergency for so long. We've been exposed to every single bug you can imagine over decades. And there was never a situation where I'd be paged or get an emergency call to somewhere, and my first thought is, shit, I've got to be scared of this patient, that they're carrying some bug that's going to kill me. Never happened, never ever entered my mind. It was always like, okay, what's going on here and how can I help? And somehow, this is the first part of the PSYOP. Back in early 2020, I could see the terror in the doctor's eyes. I saw the early the novel resuscitation protocols. I saw the intubation protocols. It was all about not letting any of the virus escape out into the hospital environment. That was the real driver, the fear of the doctors and nurses. That was the point where I thought, okay, there's something really wrong here. Maybe I'm just because it was just completely opposite our orientation as doctors. You know, you never thought about that, and that was the first sign for me to have a gut check and go, there's something really wrong. We're being set up for something really, really dangerous. I think I'm going to drop my lists as a VMO, as a visiting consultant, and I'm going to sit back and watch. And I was telling them that the masks had real problems. You know, we didn't have power.
Oh Lord, yeah.
I got them to do industrial fit testing. You know, if you're saying there's an aerosol toxin, you need to have a mask, you know, that'll cover full face, that you get a full seal, or you need something that will provide a positive pressure around the mouth, you know, so that and the fit testing was a disaster. So and so everything I tried to do, I was just working the problem. I saw risks. I was saying, like, look, we keep people out of hospital with vitamin D and early treatment. We can protect the staff but not with these, you know, ridiculous masks.
Well,
and they didn't want to listen. You know, that was the thing for me. They just didn't want to
hear. The whole world knows that you were accurate in that assumption. Now we now know the micron size of the micromicron size of the viruses. We know that if a water molecule can get through a piece of cloth, then a virus sure as hell can. And anything that you see in Canada, where you see people breathing air in the wintertime and the water molecules extend out through your balaclava or through your mask or through your scarf that you have, caretakers coming through. It all comes through. If you go into a cocktail party and there's 100 people in the room and one person comes in with COVID, the concentration of virus around all 100 people in the room within 5 minutes is the same as the person standing beside the one person that came in with COVID. It's very microscopic. It's a very low level. It gets diffused out widely through the room from the time that that one person comes in. But one thing's for sure, that person's mask doesn't slow it leaving that person's mouth, and the air doesn't slow or speed it going to the person in the furthest corner away, 200 feet away. And within 5 minutes of that one person coming in, it's diffused out. It's in a very low concentration. Most people won't get it. One or two might. But we can both assure people the masks have zero to do with transmission reduction and a great deal to do with putting strep and fungi and other things behind that mask, sloppily so that the person themselves is suffering oxygen lowering and illness affecting and mucosal immunity strain, all because they're wearing a mask.
We've got our children to wear that. We had a thing happened here. I've been living in a bus touring around Australia interviewing people, and when I had to buy the money for the bus, I was in the bank and you didn't have to wear masks anymore, but there was one guy my age wearing a mask, and he was going to the teller, "You should really wear a mask." And the teller was like going, "You stop the spread of infection." Because I wanted the money, because you got to book in now to get money. I didn't want to say anything, but I couldn't help myself. And so I said, "Why should he?" And the whole bank suddenly went silent, like someone's challenging the man with the mask. And it was like a Western where someone had stood up to call him out. And he looked at me as if to say, "How dare you challenge me?" And he said, "It stops the spread of infection." I said, "Mate, it's as useful as carting sand around the shopping trolley." And he went, "It's been proven, scientifically proven, to stop the spread of infection." And I said, "Mate, if I farted right here, right now, you'd smell it. And my fart molecules are much bigger than Omicron." And the entire bank rocked with laughter. And then at the back, this 80-year-old woman yelled out, "Go Michael," because she was a fan of the show. And even the bank manager came up to me and said, "I'm on your side, mate." But this man, you saw this man look around as if to go, "How did I become the minority all of a sudden? I'm morally superior." But it was really interesting. It showed that there's a lot of people are over it. A lot of people, they don't know what to do about it because the whole upper echelon is against them. But it's a joke that works. You should use it. The fart joke just cuts through. Everyone laughs.
Well, trying to stop mosquitoes with a chain link fence,
Right. Okay.
I think we figured that out.
I just want to get back to you. So you start to speak out. How did that? I know you're a bachelor, and so is Paul here. How did that affect your social network? One thing over here that surprised people is people you thought were full of integrity just vanished. Fear corrupted everybody. And it was a real test of personal integrity. What was that in your social circle? Did you retain all your friends, or suddenly were you becoming a bit of a leper?
Oh, I guess in the last 2 years, I've lost maybe 15% of my friends and retained 85%, but again gained a brand new 200, 300, 400, 500% more friends than I had before, because one is talking with people who have a knowledge base like yourselves, and we're becoming friends just as we talk right now. So the process has really been more edifying to my overall psychology than negative.
And the other thing,
am I sad to have lost and let's say a certain aunt or uncle who kind of doesn't value my opinions anymore, chose not to value them because they considered that it was inappropriate to caution people about probable risks of the vaccines. Yes, that is sad, but I've also seen relatives pass away because they got fully vaxxed, and by the time they got their third or their fourth, they'd been perfectly healthy, and suddenly they were down the tubes with a sudden cancer that they'd never had before. And we know that the turbo cancers are happening because of the massive effects on immunity. If there was another topic that I wouldn't mind going to at some point in our chat today, gentlemen, I'd certainly like to talk about the common thread of vaccine injury. What is it that the vaccines do to us that actually creates a vaccine injury? I think that might be interesting to your audience. So I'll just throw that out there.
There's one more question. Of course, we're Australians in Canada we're like relatives. There's New Zealand, Canada, Australia. We all had so, and then we had our crazy American brothers. They were like, oh, that's our crazy cousins. But we were all similar. And our three countries, we have a saying over here, fear is the virus, courage is the cure. But the fear corrupted our country. Australians are almost like a defeated race. You see it in their eyes. The fear has beaten them down for a few years. Is this what it's like in Canada under Trudeau?
Oh yes. And we know we're being psyoped. We know that it's for the purpose of, hey, I bought all these vaccines. They've got to be used. Hundreds of millions of dosages. That's the message that he doesn't speak out loud, but we know that's the reality. We know that influencers who have greater influence on our prime minister than the prime minister himself, influencers out of Europe and out of certain organizations that want this psyop to work and want us to be even more afraid of the next pandemic when they release it against us. They would have had influences on parliamentarians. Heck, the WEF brags that they've got half of the council members or prime ministerial cabinet have attended and become part.
They penetrated the cabinets, Klaus would say.
That's right. And we see the results of it, and the PSYOP just continued under that name that doesn't rhyme.
Well, over here too now, it's becoming a plague of cancer. Everyone knows people with turbo cancers now. We call it the weeping years. What's it like there? And talk about what you wanted to talk about now, about the thread of
Can I start, Chris, with
Sure.
a bit of context? They said the shot stays in the arm, and they said it came from a wet market. And I followed Chris Martenson, I have for years, and so he focused in on the furin cleavage site and how that just didn't appear. You know, it was completely phylogenetically out of place. And like we now know that the furin cleavage site is nested within a 18-19 nucleotide sequence, which was patented by Moderna, I think, in 2017. So even in 2020, it was pretty clear to me that this was a lab experiment gone wrong, or a deliberate construction, just from the furin cleavage site. And I think when it went beyond doubt with Moderna Gate, when we found that patent, because the odds of that is just infinitesimal. So then the virus and the vaccine are co-emergent. Now, so that's the first point. The second point I wanted to make was about it stays in the arm. Well, you know, as an anaesthetist, I'd studied.
Oh, no, it doesn't. I'll just jump in with no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Well, if you give a shot of intramuscular adrenaline, does it stay in the arm? No,
it's in your lungs and in your brain within 6 seconds.
You'll see the brain. You'll see the brain and the heart effects very, very quickly. That's why we give it intramuscularly. Now, if you gave a shot of saline, or sorry, even better, sterile water into the arm, you go and look at that under ultrasound. You come back a day later, or even a few hours later. It's absorbed. You know, it doesn't stay there forever. These pools of and I knew that it would distribute to the total body water. In other words, it would go everywhere. It would go everywhere, just like a shot of, you know, the limiting case isn't that these are great big protein molecules that will stay in the arm and not move. This was more like the limiting case of giving sterile water into the arm, which was going to be absorbed quickly and would go everywhere. And then the question is, well, what does it do when it goes everywhere? Well, we know that these are lipid nanoparticles. They're transfection agents. They're going to turn the self into non-self. They're effectively going to create an autoimmune condition. They're going to, and I think you've talked about it. I've heard you talk about it a bit like someone who's had a transplant. Your body's going to start attacking the organs.
Yep. Well, I'll jump in here now. I think you brought
please.
us to that point, Paul. I appreciate it. And yes, that is how I phrased it in some of my talks. And I think we're both right on in that regard. We didn't train in transplant surgery, and we didn't train initially in immunology, you and I, but we've learned a lot about it. And we have understood that anything that is non-human or not even specific to your DNA. If you've got DNA elements especially, but DNA or RNA elements that are figured out in the lab, they're certainly not you. They all wave flags. Whatever cells that they go into, those cells are viewed by your huge immune system. The body's immune system is huge. It's from your bone marrow to your brain to every tissue in between. The immune responders, the lymphocytes of various types, the killer lymphocytes, the T lymphocytes, and all of the lymphocytes have the potential to go after something that is non-you. That's why if you get a transplanted heart, you must be on immune suppressant agents for months or even years, so that your body doesn't reject that lung transplant, or your body doesn't reject that kidney transplant or heart transplant. Well, by letting that shot go into our arms and letting that non-recognizable, non-human DNA RNA complex to go into your kidneys, heart, brain, and ovaries, well, then your kidney, heart, brain, and ovaries is being attacked in one fashion or another by your own immune system. And that's why so many of the surprise cancers and the surprise ailments that are happening in youngish, healthiest people, it's because their immune system is strong. The elderly are dying more of the clot episodes and the strokes and things like that. But the younger people are dying of immune consequence diseases, where their immunity has been knocked into the depths, and with no proper immune system. I'm misstating there just a moment. Yes, their immune system is being harmed, but in spite of the fact that your immune system is being harmed by the vaccine, the immune system is still around and is strong enough to do even more harm itself. Your own immune system is willing to harm that myocardium, and you get a myocarditis, which is an inflammatory, immune-caused myocarditis. It's not a germ-caused myocarditis. It's your body attacking yourself with a hyperimmunity, a hyperimmune attack against your heart. And your heart gives out 6 months later in your sleep, and you're 19 years of age.
That's happening here.
Yeah.
It's happening a lot.
It's happening in every country on Earth.
Yeah.
Because the whole Earth has been foisted by an Earth-planned event. I'm so sad about it. I'm so bitter about it. I'm sure as heck not happy for my own circumstance, having 2 shots. Thank God I learned early enough that I hadn't had my 4th or 5th now. The doctors who are getting 4th or 5th shots, their incidence of death from the research by Dr. Macus and many other physicians around the world is showing our own colleagues and our own nursing colleagues who stayed in the game and who took every shot that their hospital continued to advise them. I weep for the fact that there are going to be terrible cancers and other ailments for these dear people.
Yeah.
And all we can do,
Dr. Chris,
pray and hope.
in the New Zealand data, it was the first and second shots did have deaths, but the third and fourth, the first and second boosters, were particularly heavy. Funnily enough, the 5th one was less on the data that I saw, but each shot seems to be cumulative. There's like the risk goes up with each shot. So it's a disaster. It really is a disaster.
Paul, I'm going to put my arm up. Can I? Sorry to interrupt, Michael, just a second. I'm sorry, Michael. Because when Paul put his arm up like that, saying that the risk of certain ailments was going up, well, guess what? Lack of immunity to COVID also goes up the more shots you got. In the States, at the huge Cleveland clinic with 50 to 60,000 staff, when they tested for 4 to 5 months, what is the profile of infection in our working staff? 8 to 10,000 of them were non-vaccinated. The hospital system didn't require vaccination in that U.S. hospital, but just about 80% of the staff took the shots. Some took 1, 2, 3, and 4, and even 5 shots during the months that this was studied. And the cutoff point showed that the people who got no vax at all, they got almost no COVID at all, a nice low number happening. The people who had 2 or 3 shots started to go up like this. More and more COVID events for them, more and more time off work due to COVID for those staff who were doubly and triply vaxxed. And the ones that were 4 to 5 times vaxxed, the quadruple or the 5 times vaxxed group, their rate of infection, their rate of complication, their rate of time off work their time in the ICU, they were all at the peak. So what do we have? We have a vaccine that's a non-vaccine. We have a vaccine that increases the disease that they were supposed to help or prevent. So it's making that worse.
It's an
And
anti-vaccine.
meanwhile, it's damaging your ability to fight other ailments or even get other ailments as well.
No, do you know, Chris, just one moment. In my complaint, the medical council complaint in 2021, 3 of the 10 Facebook posts that they flagged in my suspension hearing were on the topic of antibody-dependent enhancement. I was warning about this. I was saying, not only will the shot have the potential to fail to protect, but it will make you more vulnerable. I'm not happy, you know, I'm not happy that any of the things I said turned out to be true, but this is classic antibody-dependent enhancement. It was completely predictable. People like Robert Malone were warning about it, and that was the tweet. It was a link to a BitChute video where he was explaining that this was the vaccinologist's worst nightmare. Rather than protecting you, it makes you worse. And the Cleveland Clinic study shows that it's completely true. You know, and
yes, absolutely.
And the reason I brought up the water injected and going everywhere and adrenaline going to the heart is because of Nakahara. You know, this is the glucose uptake radio labeled PET scan study, and I called it.
I want you to carry on with this. I have to step away from the camera for about 35 seconds. Okay. You carry on with exactly that, and I'll be able to pick up with you because I know what you're talking about. Give me a moment.
All right. Okay. There's
yeah, the tweet was about at Dragon Fishing.
Stay there because I'm going to go for a /2 because this is Zoom. It's not live, so I'm going to do.
That's right, because we can cut this out. All right, good.
Yeah.
My colleague's taking a break too. That sounds like a good idea. Just need a glass of water here. Thank you, Michael.
We're not doing this live, Chris, so we normally do things live, but we have
yeah, we normally do live. Yeah,
we have liberty on a Zoom call.
Now,
great.
Because you're both doctors, right? So when you're doctors, you often talk shop like mechanics. And us lay people sort of sit there pretending we're nodding as though we're knowing. We're not really following. But one thing I think would be really great to hear from you, Doctor, is a description of like homage to how incredible our natural immune system is. I think most people have no concept. They just think it's white blood cells. That's what I thought. So could you fill us in on just how incredible our natural immune system is?
Yeah, it's incredible. It's multifaceted. It's the thing that keeps, I mean, what are we? We're mobile living agents. We've got intestines full of all sorts of shit, to be honest, and the microbes that are associated with that. Why do you think we're all walking around alive with our brains not be infested with germs that are in that stuff going up into our brains on a regular basis and killing us off at a 90% death rate every year? Well, we don't die off at a 90% death rate because we have this immune, which is not being produced, by the way, of the vaccines, not an immunity it's called natural immunity. And it's there. And the white cell ability to respond is there. And yes, antibodies are part of what happens. And we get jiggy with our environment, when we get jiggy with the fact that what's in the sandbox, we get jiggy with the fact that what's in our intestines, and it can be knocked off, and knocked off even better as our immune system is really good at recognizing, we don't need that stuff around, we'll deal with that. But the antibodies are a big part of the fight. They're the identifiers. If you get hepatitis, there's some antibodies created, but you not getting hepatitis in the future is more based upon CD cells. Those immune, their ability to fight and be the fighters, and the killer cells, the natural killer cells and the T killer cells. They are also sensitized by this whole process. So the antibody that shows that, yes, you've had hepatitis in the past, is just a signpost. It does next to nothing to fight you getting hepatitis in the future. It's the T cell response. It's the T cell component of your immune system that is the natural killer that goes in fast and does things. And it's been made, those T cells have been made strong by just normal natural exposure. Here's the problem with this COVID-19 junk that had been put into our arms. The greatest drop in white cells that occurs in your body in the 3 months after you get a COVID shot is the T cells. Your T cells are wiped down, are lowered in a massive way by having been injected with this sludge. So the stuff that really matters for immunity, T cells, what matters against viruses, against parasites, against many jab that you and I, beginning tomorrow or the next day, any ones that you get that have mRNA in it, that is an mRNA based, is doing you harm. It's harming your T cell immunity. And that's why we're getting strep that's running through the nation inappropriately, respiratory syncytial virus that's going through the nation inappropriately. These are not COVID viruses. Hey, strep isn't even a virus, it's a bacterium. But the fact that these ailments are able to happen more easily is because T cell immunity has been harmed by the COVID-19 vax. It's basic immunology. The real, serious, knowledgeable immunologists will tell you whether they agree with me or not. And I know they will agree with me, because I'm agreeing with them. The real immunologists who know how immunology works knows that T cell immunity is the crucial thing that keeps your crap in your gut and not going to your brain. And that's being harmed.
One of the great propaganda exercises, successes for them, is getting people to not value how brilliant their immune system is, and getting to a point where they think, no, because unless you've got big pharma pouring shit into your veins, you literally won't survive in this world. Your immune system is not up to the job.
Yeah, Michael, that was one of the lies,
that
a shot would be superior to natural immunity. It was never the way.
They want the shots to go in, so they had to tell the lie, right, Paul? They had to tell the lie because they couldn't sell nothing for a price, but they could sell an injection for a price.
Exactly. And because when you think about it, this is a pathogen, assuming you're not thinking that the whole thing's the viruses don't exist, that you breathe in, and it's first exposed, you're first presented to it through your nose and mouth, and that's the immune system. It's the mucosal immune system.
Yes, exactly right.
And it develops secretory IgA, and that's the sort of stuff that stops you getting it next time. That's the sort of stuff that produces herd immunity. If you inject it into your muscle, you're bypassing. It's like you've got a medieval city under siege, and they're focusing on the keep rather than the walls around the city that are there to keep out the invaders. There were so many failings in the logic and the immunology of what they did. It's astounding. And there was a systematic review that showed really clearly that natural immunity, in the Lancet of all papers, I presented it in May at Dr. Malhotra's tour, that every combination of these different products compared to natural immunity was superior and lasted longer and longer and longer, and that was the vaccination we had. So Omicron was really the vaccine campaign that we needed, because it produced the right sort of immunity. See, it just completely flawed. That's my comment.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you go ahead, Doc.
Oh no, Michael, you now go ahead, please. I'll listen to wherever you want to take me to.
That I'm very interested now. If we feel the pendulum is swinging here, there's people aren't taking 4 out of 5 are not taking boosters. They're pushing masks constantly, but they're actually rare as hen's teeth. They actually stand out now. So the people are defiantly not wearing it. It's almost like a an undeclared peaceful civil war, where the people are not as easy pushover as they have been in the past, but they have a great distrust of doctors now. Doctors have gone from here. Now, I think used car salesmen are above them. How do you think going forward we reestablish trust with the medical doctors and health?
Well, the medical doctors and the academic medical doctors who have held sway over the narrative, they're going to have to be doing a huge amount of apologizing. Mega apologizing to the entire world. We had it wrong. We forgot that we knew that natural immunity was better than artificial immunity. We forgot that the respiratory version of a secretory antibody was useful, but anything that was injected to create a blood-borne antibody would be useless. Sorry, we forgot that. We apologize. We apologize for giving you renal toxic remdesivir to kill your parents in the hospital when it was given against the family's will. We apologize. Loads of apologizing is to begin with is going to be required. And the multiple reasons that I would speak to it, they just when I mentioned remdesivir, it reminds me of the fact that in the United States, which is quite a litigious country, as you know, and families would go to court and say, Your Honor, we want our parent to not get remdesivir and we want them to get ivermectin. And other people went and making the same request. The hospital is demanding it be given remdesivir, but we want to demand that it not happen. And we wish this other treatment in its place. 100 people, 50 of them, the judge agreed with the family. 50, the judge agreed with the family and said, you'll be allowed to bring in ivermectin, and the hospital is proscribed. That is, I legally prevent the hospital from giving the remdesivir protocol, and that is how the case will proceed. A completely different 50 people, because there was 50 different judges, 100 different judges, right? 50 people were denied by the judge. The judge came down on the side of the hospital. The remdesivir protocol continued. There was no possibility of bringing in ivermectin or other measures to help that person. So that's 100 patients, 2 groups of 50 each. All 50 of the hospital protocol people were dead a week later. All 50 of the court cases, and these are completely separate cases across the United States, unrelated to each other, but the 50 that succeeded in court where the judge agreed with the family, they all lived because they were given ivermectin and they were stopped from being given the remdesivir. Do we need any more proof than that? Than 2 groups whose only difference was that they had a different judge giving a different requirement to the system. The system killed those 50 people. The separate judges saved the lives of the 50 people who were out of hospital 5 days later, having been given ivermectin. So, dear world out there, these summaries are veracious. They are true. I can give some connections to that later in the week to my colleagues here so that they can present it to you and you can look at it objectively. But I know for a fact that they're true. And 50 deaths versus 50 lives, just defined by getting the right judge.
Yeah.
We had over here, I've interviewed hundreds of nurses who refused to get jabbed, and so even though they worked through the pandemic, they were sacked as soon as the mandates came in. And what they talked about was in the hospital, one thing that they one of their purposes in life was to be an advocate for the patient, was to question doctors, to say, you sure this is right? You know, this is what they... Now, the hospitals are communist. No one questions anything. And basically, we're almost living in a socially acceptable Holocaust where these people are dying and everyone's like, you know, media doesn't talk about it. No one talks about it. And you're crazy if you bring it up. But how has that happened within the hospitals that the doctors and nurses are literally not reacting to what they can actually see happening? Is it just fear of their jobs or fear of the state, or
Oh, I think I can help you with that, Michael. I think it was the 40-year transfer of styles of board of directors of hospitals. 45 years ago, when I was just beginning my career, boards of directors of hospitals were probably 70% physicians and 30% people from the community. Now the boards of directors are 90% of community, and 90% of that 90% are lawyers. Wow. Don't they love to draft up wordy paragraphs of things? That's an important job to do if you're a lawyer. God bless you all. You do great work. I couldn't do that. I like my hands on things and fix it and have an involvement, and you guys go ahead and write things. But if boards of directors and boards of hospitals are dominated by non-physicians over the last 40 years, that's why protocol-based treatments became the norm. And individual physicians were less and less able to risk doing something that they truly thought was appropriate for the patient. And the patient was agreeing to it. And they wanted to go in a fashion that wasn't, so maybe it was outside the box, but it was still an approved medication. That doctor would have been allowed to do that in 1985, 1990. They can't do it anymore. They have to be like robots, because the protocols written in those many, many paragraphs by the boards that have very few physicians on it, that has what set us on this slippery slope that Paul is familiar with too.
Yeah, Michael, you know, there's a trick in doctors' minds that patients die, but if you followed the protocol, you're protected. So you can literally kill any number of patients, and the doctors will feel I'm safe from attack because I followed the protocol. The problem here now is that still exists, but the protocols are killing. And we have regulators which are corrupt and have been taken over, and they've used that to censor and bully. And I'm still gobsmacked about what happened with Dr. Mark Trozzi. I see people like
Paul, I'll interrupt just to say you could be equally gobsmacked to me, because he and I both had our license suspended initially on the very same day for going to help, because we still had our licenses at that point. We went to help her practice where the patients weren't being seen. And the day that we went to help her practice, and we were legitimately licensed physicians still at that point, a day and a half later, the college put in the complaints against both Dr. Trozzi and myself on the very same day. Just a little aside for you to know. Mark and I are very good friends.
Yeah, it's one of my regrets, or one of my joys now, I should say, is that we're starting to meet, because we've been aware of our Canadian brethren and our brethren in the UK and our brethren in New Zealand. Very similar stories, the same fight, but we haven't really been communicating these last 4 years, and it's taken 4 years for us to start to connect. And when the more we connect internationally, I realize we're all the same people. We've all experienced such similar things, It's that's the pleasure, that's the joy of what's happened.
It is a pleasure, Paul, and I just wanted to flip back to something we fell away from, but you'd mentioned it about 10 minutes ago, and it was the Nakahara study, and it was actually a 4-city study. Yes, he was the lead scientist, but there were scientists and researchers in Houston, in New York City, and in Oxford, England. And there they culled down from 7,000 patients, but they had 1,000 patients who were being PET scanned for other illnesses, nothing to do with myocarditis, nothing to do with the heart ailment, but the heart, of course, was included in the PET scan. And when they sussed it all out, of the 1,000 patients who were the actual study group, 2/3 of which were vaccinated, 1/3 of which was non-vaccinated. The 2/3 group, the 700 or so vaccinated, their hearts for 6 to 7 months after the double jab worked 46% harder. You, as a cardiologist, you would be apoplectic if a heart was working 15% harder due to some circumstance or drug that the person was being given. That's dangerous. That's energy being expended that doesn't need to be. But there they are, the vaccinated folks for 6 straight months. That's 18 million heartbeats. 18 million heartbeats in which the heart is working close to 50% harder than it ought to. The non-vaccinated people who are also just being PET scanned, again, just to follow up for cancers or other issues that they were being PET scanned for, their FDG level didn't increase at all. It sat right where it should be. There was no extra heart effort going on in these folks. So they're folks without myocarditis, but they had myocardial effort up 46 to 50% in the vaccinated only. Nakahara's, that is the final nail in this coffin in terms of, are we doing anything bad to our hearts? You're damn right we're doing something bad to our hearts. We're making it worth 50% harder for at least 6 months after a shot. Oh, and the nincompoop bureaucrats think, oh, because the vaccines aren't working terribly well, let's give them even more often. Let's give them 6, 7 months apart. Well, so that means every 6 months, you're giving a boost to the heart having to work more.
Yeah, I think Nakahara was a very, very important paper. We had a cardiologist on the channel who's a vaxophile, safe and effective, everyone get jabbed type cardiologist, and he denies that there's anything happening. And I brought up Nakahara. He also thinks that all the studies that show the elevations in troponin above the 99th percentile don't mean anything, because anything can cause troponin to go up. You know, which I find.
Yeah, give me a break.
Let
me interrupt you. I got to ask you, what did he say when you said, look at the Nakahara PET study? Did that finally stop him in his tracks a little bit?
Yeah, but then he said he was aware of it, and then he moved on. He didn't want to talk more about it, but he was asserting that only 1 in 10,000 people were getting myocarditis, and I was making the case that one of the important things about Nakahara, because nearly everyone in the vaccinated group, their hearts, became dark on the PET scan. They lit up with this glucose uptake, and so there's a change in their metabolism. And why do things light up on the PET scan? Because of inflammation. Inflammation is
and also effort. Yeah, not just inflammation. Effort too, because you need sugar
but you need to have a stressor to. If your heart is at rest and is not being stressed, you don't need this additional glucose. So it's a stressor on the heart.
There's another thing.
I think the key thing is it's working harder, even if you have no symptoms. You might be symptom free, but its heart is working harder. That's the beauty of that study. These were people not with cardiac symptoms whatsoever. They think they're fine, but they're working 46% harder than they should. That's a strong canary in the mine shaft.
Okay.
To me, what I think what it shows is, we were talking about how the vaccine goes everywhere, the shot goes everywhere, and then it changes the heart muscle and other organs into non-self, and then invites the attack of the killer lymphocytes and the autoimmune attack, and that is showing up in nearly everyone who's got the shot on these PET scans. I believe this is a reflection. I believe this is a reflection, so that it's not 1 in 10,000, as Dr. Dan said.
No.
But the Nakahara suggests it's almost universal. It's like you give the adrenaline in the arm and it goes to the heart. It transfects. It causes an infiltrate. I did a paper on my Substack in 2021.
I got to support you, but I got to interrupt. The universal is the key point about this. Is you don't get an elevation of effort across the board in 700 people out of 700, averaging 46% excess effort. You don't get that unless it's universal. Yeah. You don't get a number like that unless it effectively isn't universal, and it's universal for the reasons you just mentioned. A quiet inflammation is going on. A quiet inefficiency in your heart is going on. And that quiet inefficiency is requiring the cells that are hanging in and doing their job to suck up more sugar than usual and just work harder than usual with every single beat.
Yes.
I think our two things are lining up together there, Paul.
And Christian Mueller in Germany, and the Mansugan paper from Thailand. You know, we're looking at where they looked closely. Mansugan, it was boys having their second shot of Pfizer. We're talking, 2.5% in those two studies of diagnosed subclinical myocarditis, but there were lots of clinical features, including troponin rises. So I knew that it wasn't 1 in 10,000 from studies like Mueller and Mansugan et al.
It's between 3 and 9 out of 100 is what the troponin studies are showing. It's between 3 to 9 out of 100, which is a lot more than 1 out of 10,000.
Which is massive when you're giving it to billions. And the point I was making with Dr. Dan is that the Nakahara study suggests the proposition that it's even much more common than that, because we can see it on the PET scan. It tells you that, okay, subclinical until you die in your sleep, subclinical until you drop on the sports field, because you don't actually need to have enough damage to, like what we're used to thinking of myocarditis. You put your ultrasound and you can see the ejection fraction is reduced. You don't need that level of damage to be killed by these shots. Because among other things, it damages the conducting system of the heart. And,
you're absolutely right. And I've been saying that in all of my speeches, and it's unbelievable.
Subclinical myocarditis can kill, is my point. You can have little focus.
Yes. I just want to just come up from a layman. So what you're saying is these things make the heart work 46% faster. And then, because I've interviewed people, they've shown me that they wear the watches and they go, look, my heart's running at almost 200 beats a minute and I'm sitting here doing nothing. So at some point, the heart just stops. It just gives up. Is that what happens where these people die in their sleep?
Oh, yeah. I mean, 200 a minute is an incredible number. Even people who are ticking away at just 110 per minute, where it should be 70. What the heck is a person who's not exercising doing with a heart rate of 110, let alone 200? It shouldn't be happening. And what my colleague here, Dr. Oosterhuis, has pointed out, that effort and inflammatory effect to produce that effort, that's what's making your heart behave as if it's already in heart failure. I have to put this in perspective. Something called heart failure, which is not a heart attack, and it's not a heart pain, and it's nothing to do with troponin. A failing heart works harder just because it has to, because it's already lost a certain amount of its muscle mass to do its job. So the part that's still there has to work as extra hard and take up sugar extra more just to do the job, to keep you conscious, to keep you from falling over faint. It works hard. We have the proof, as Paul talked about.
Wasn't there a paper recently where they actually added the mRNA to a heart model, in vitro myocardial heart muscle, and showed it was directly toxic? So these agents actually produced changes identical to myocarditis in an in vitro model. So, this stuff is not good for the heart. It's not good for any organ, but it seems that the heart, the immune system, and we haven't, is a major site, and we haven't yet even opened. There's so many cans of worms. We haven't talked yet about the
Can we go back to Michael just for a moment, please? Because I think we may be getting a little bit lost in the weeds on just the cardiologic stuff, gentlemen. Okay. And so it's over to Michael, and Michael will go anywhere else you'd like to go.
I just want to talk about something else that's happening in Canada, is not yet happening here, that also affects the heart and the soul, and that's MAIDs. Your euthanasia. What is it like from a doctor? Are you backing this new, euthanasia is like almost going to get a Uber rider to turn up at your house and knock knock you off. I mean, from here, it looks insane. It looks like you're basically telling people you're worthless. Get out of here. You know.
Well, that's a big jump from where we've just been. I'm not. I don't care for patients in that population. It's not my job to do so, and I don't have active
I'm asking
activity
you
that
as a
I can speak
person,
to.
as a human being, because that's the big thing over here at the moment. We're in shock hearing the stories of maids. You know that you can get it for having a mental illness now, and one of the mental illnesses they're saying is vaccine hesitancy. I mean, it's just, or is
Well,
this, we're hearing this
the,
wrong?
the, well, you're looking. No, you're not hearing it wrong. There's lots of things conflating together, but the general comment I would make is that the social comfort in society is less. People who used to be able to run a small business successfully, it's gone. They thought that the ability to sell the business might give them a modest pension when their business closed up. But in fact, they've got no pension because they can't sell the business. The restaurant is defunct, and they're not getting nearly the dollar they should for selling their lease or their business. And these people are depressed. And these people perhaps are physically injured by the vaccine, and they're now breathless, and they've got vessel inflammation throughout their whole body. They feel like absolute hell. I can't speak to a Canadian story. I will speak to of a young woman in Switzerland who was in her early 20s. And she was so ill, so massively ill from vasculitis and respiratory compromise and brain and thinking compromise and limbs being paralyzed or half paralyzed. She had this whole total change of herself from being this brilliantly healthy 22, 23-year-old, that in the end, she was slipping into death thanks to vaccine injury. And she chose to take a cocktail of narcotics to end her life at that young age. But she was forced into that circumstance of choice because the world had foisted a toxic element into her body and made her so ill. Medical assistance in dying is not a medical therapy. Medical assistance in dying is they use the same drugs as to put the axe murderer to death. It's a societal assistance in dying in which someone is pushing the plunger. But the narcotic and other elements that are put in to end the life is the same as if you were guilty of murder and the state was putting you to death.
Is this what Dr. Paul shared something recently? It was from Canada, and it was a euthanasia clinic, I think, that was saying that its services were now available to children.
Services are available, but I think that was satire.
I was satire, was it? Well, apparently it is coming. Yeah.
It was, in fact, yes, satire.
It was satire, but it was chilling. Yes, I can understand where the role comes from, where people who are terminally ill, where you can't have no quality of life, that we would offer the service. The problem is, I have zero trust in the ethics and the profession anymore to administer this sort of power. If you talked to me 5 years ago, before COVID, I would have said, of course, you know, people who have come to the end of the line, they have no quality of life, they're certainly going to die, they're suffering, and the ability to ameliorate their suffering has reached all the endpoints. Then medically assisted euthanasia might make sense. But what's happened is now it's being expanded, like you say, to children. They're talking about extending it to people with psychiatric problems. And we've just lived through 4 years of the greatest breakdown in ethics, where the profession has gone to become a leading cause of death in society. And now you're adding to that.
Oh, he's frozen. Well, while he's frozen, I'll let you take over. It's because you're in there in Canada. I've just got a thing that doctors, the main thrust of a doctor is to, sorry, Paul, you froze for a bit, is to save lives and prevent harm. And yet here now you've got a whole industry of doctors just killing people?
Driven by societal acceptance, driven by big pharma, driven by specifically a psyops which is worldwide. Doctors can be psyoped too. Doctors can be fooled too. I was thoroughly fooled for the first 2 years of COVID. I'm not fooled anymore, but we can be fooled. We can be pressured. We can be put into a social ringer. But everybody, every doctor, I'd like to walk down Yonge Street with 100 doctors arm in arm with me next Saturday. I can't get them to come and do it with me, but they're frightened. They're frightened of what this pseudo government of ours is telling them to do. They're frightened that their bank accounts will be frozen for walking that walk with me. Just like they wanted to frighten the truckers to not do and say what they did, and to show that there was an impasse between the government and themselves and being able to have a normal livelihood. Those truckers were allowed for 1.5 years to cross the border without vaccines or passports or anything. They were just doing their jobs. They were heroes for doing it. And the minute that they questioned and said, well, we think this could hurt me. I might die and my family won't have a breadwinner if I take this shot that I see is killing people. How can you require me to take a shot that we can see is killing 3, 4, and 5% of the receivers? That's what the truckers were smarter than the scientists. They invited some very smart scientists. That's when I met them all for the first time, Dr. Paul Alexander and Dr. Byron Bridle out of Canada, and Dr. Roger Hodkinson of Canada. Those 3 gentlemen came together and they were the scientific advisors to the truckers. They sat there in a room willing to talk with government scientists, and the government scientists wouldn't even show up for the discussion. And I'll finish this little segment, if I may, by just stating Geert Vanden Bossche was mentioned by yourself, Paul. In my opinion, Geert Vanden Bossche and Dr. Paul Alexander, of both American and Canadian citizenship, these 2 people were the people who knew the most about the big picture. They knew the most about how you can't vaccinate your way out of a pandemic. They've always had it right. They continue to have it right. And it's only a malicious, driven group that is denying these best scientists of the world to hold sway and to get us back to where we should be at. These malicious politicians and WEF that is above the politicians, and certain psyops that are even above WEF, they are the ones that are continuing to foist this on us. It's a war. It's a war in which we're undermanned. There aren't many of Paul and myself compared to the millions of doctors around. There's perhaps 100,000 who are in our grouping, but there's millions who aren't, and they're all being fooled. They're being fooled by the thing, whatever you want to call the thing. They're being fooled by the psyop.
Absolutely.
Can we just go now? We know about the DNA contamination. We could go on. It's like going bad, bad, bad. What can people do? Are the protocols being pushed by McCullough and others? Are they actually working? What is it that people can do now to fight back on their own level, that they can do for themselves if they've had vaccine injuries or are concerned about it?
There are lots of answers. There's not just one group, but you mentioned McCullough. The recommendation now that a minute to take bromelain and nattokinase and curcumin, those 3 things readily available, anyone could and should take to see if it will lessen their symptomatology. But also other treatments which would require a prescription, such as a higher to medium dose of ivermectin to assist you if you've got a neurologic condition. There was a young woman in Canada here who, she was having tremors like this. She was just shaking like this continuously after having been exposed to 2 jabs. And a general practitioner in Toronto gave that young woman ivermectin for 3 weeks in a moderate dosage range. The tremors were gone. She was no longer like a Parkinson's patient, because the doctor at that point wasn't being prevented from prescribing it. He prescribed it. Ivermectin is not only a reasonable therapeutic when a person's in hospital and starting to fail, and it would save them from remdesivir and all that bullshit. It is also the most important, when assessed by a doctor. Ivermectin properly utilized, can be assistive to very severe symptomatology, including neurologic symptomatology. But we can't even sit in the doctor's lounge and talk about it because the world's being run by morons.
Yeah, ivermectin is the single most effective, single most useful drug for treating vaccine injury. That's not to say that nattokinase, bromelain, curcumin, and many other things don't. And often you treat the symptoms. The idea of the nattokinase is, well, it's good cardiovascularly anyway. It's a brilliant thing to be taking. You know, we can't get it in Australia. I've got some natto in my freezer, so I do the soybean slime au natural. But yeah, there's lots of things we can do, Michael. But while people remain psyoped, brainwashed, and not open to, but of course the first thing is take no more shots. You know.
Yeah, take no more shots. I'll throw in two other little nutraceuticals of a sort. Artemisinin can be a poor man's ivermectin kind of thing, or a non-prescription ivermectin. Artemisinin, if properly and carefully taken per dosage, can be useful for both the practitioner to know about and the individual patient to know about. Have a conversation about artemisinin, and also have a conversation about black seed oil, which is again a similar plant-based ivermectin, artemisinin, and black seed oil. They're all similar in the sense that the molecules are like a big Afghan blanket. It's like an Afghan blanket with all sorts of interlacing components physically. And that's why it's so good against poisons. That's why it's so good against parasites. That's why it's so good against spike protein. It can go in there and cleanse out the situation, and you can piss it out of your body if you're allowed to take either of those three agents. So I'm not allowed to prescribe anymore, so I'm not prescribing to anyone in this conversation. But I am encouraging people to go out and look at those three medicines through naturalistic healers and doctors who are also willing to talk about it. But you can also make your own choices. Choose carefully, choose very carefully, but be informed that there are things out there to help you. God bless everybody.
One of the real questions, I usually use this at the end. How have you changed from who you were before you'd even heard of COVID to the gentleman that we're speaking to now? How has it changed you?
I guess the biggest change is that I've regained the role of being a scientist. I was a practitioner before. I read and I knew what the best drugs to get a person out of anaphylactic shock. If I was an emergency doctor, I knew what to use and what not to use to get the person so that they would walk out the door breathing normally an hour later. And if I didn't use the right things properly on a timely basis, they'd be going to the morgue. So I knew what to do. I knew how to practice. I've read the books and I knew that, but I wasn't going in and scientifically studying again and again and trying to reinvent the wheel or try to know more than what the specialists had told us to use in the circumstance. But now the biggest change is I've had to go in and learn. My own college is telling me not to talk about these things, but I've had to go in and learn that these things are safe and are helpful. And this lady in Toronto didn't get better because the pills were useless to her. She got better because ivermectin was neurologically helpful to her terrible condition that the vax had caused. So I've learned, I've become a scientist, and I will remain a scientist on these topics. And I'm so glad that others are doing the same. And I wish the best to everybody. Keep studying it up. That's the biggest change. I was a practitioner. I've become a scientific doctor who is now not able to practice. But that's because of politics.
When you were being deregistered, was there a hearing? Did you get to have a say to the board? Or did you
it's in process. It's literally in process as we speak. Times in front of them with lawyers will be coming up shortly. It's been a 1.5-year process, a full year without my license. But I've adhered to what I'm required to adhere to. I can't be a doctor if the licensing body has taken away my taxi license, as it were.
Yeah, Chris, I say that I was no longer a doctor after March 2020. I became more like a minister, a lama of early treatment. And
Right on.
and I bless everyone in the name of the holy horse paste, the hydroxy, the vitamin D, the zinc, the quercetin, and the zinc ionophores, which include azithromycin and doxy, and the mysterious melatonin. There you go. I had to give you the blessing.
That is a very good blessing, and it's shorter than the Lord's Prayer, has only about 6 ingredients, and it saves your life.
Yeah.
I'll tell you
Are
something.
any of the colleges listening to us, I hope, Paul? Maybe they'll finally get a soul, and maybe they'll finally say, oh, we're sorry we were wrong. You were right, doctors. You were right.
I don't know that we'll ever get the apology, but I think we will get the collapse in confidence, because we're seeing that. People aren't going out and getting the shots. People aren't wearing masks. But at the same time, we're seeing a hardening. Like, look what's happened to Jordan Peterson. You know, he's being sent to re-education camps. See what's happened to all of us. We're canaries in the coal mine, you know.
Yep, a few of us canaries are dead. Back to you, Michael. Thank you.
I was going to tell you something beautiful, though, that some Canadians might not have heard of. And we owe it to the courage of the Canadians that when you had the truckies thing going on, that inspired over here a thing we called EPIC. Because Australia's a big country like Canada, and all the borders are closed. And there was a call out from freedom fighters to come to Canberra, the country's capital. People came from all over Australia, well over 1 million people.
Wow.
The mainstream media says it was only 10,000, but Paul and I were there. There was more, and it was joyous. They came up there, and they had a campground there called Epic, a sprawling campsite. It's enormous. And in one day, it was literally empty. And 2 days later, it was like a refugee camp of joy. There was people who were just hugging and kissing, getting on, helping each other, rich, poor, different colors, everything you can think of. And this was inspired by the Canadians. And they also did it in New Zealand. There's a film that we're going to hopefully help push called River of Freedom. They started it there. And it all started with the courage of you Canucks. This is what you did. And we despaired when we watched you guys being attacked, your bank accounts and this. And I think if we can, through these interviews, through Canada and Australia, just sort of build bonds between the freedom movements. That's why that song we just started with, Oh Canada, we're obviously putting a challenge out to Canadians going, write a freedom song for Australia, and we'll share it. You know, let's get lines of art and anything else going that we can strengthen, because it's a global war. So it's time for us to start fighting it globally, you know. But hats off to you guys. The courage of you truckies and the beauty of how you wear. I've seen the documentaries, and standing up to the horror of Trudeau. I mean, Trudeau, it's staggering.
I call him Turdo. I call him Turdo, Turdeau, because I think that's a more suitable name.
Well, he's made his own bed in terms of people in other nations having their opinion of him. I haven't said tons politically. I'm going to stick my medical highway. I feel I'm best to do that. But I think the world sees what despots look like. And we see despots in Washington. We see despots in Ottawa. We see despots in, dare I say, France. Leadership is behaving despotically. Society is having to react to protect their food supplies, their individually owned farms, their right to their medical autonomy, their right to not be taken in front of a judge, told that they're failing to get their injection, and the judge is going to order the state inject this person against their will. We are about 3 months away from that happening in our world, in certain jurisdictions. It is happening in Brazil already. It is happening in Brazil right now, that legally entrenched courts have the power to Not just coerce or encourage or say you won't have a job if you don't get the jab. No. You're going to sit in this chair. We're going to strap you down and we're putting the vaccine in your arm. That is happening right down in Brazil. And this is a lethal vaccine. This is a life-shortening vaccine. This is not a vaccine. It is a harm agent. And please, just everybody, peacefully but fully resist. Peacefully and fully protect your health and resist. We have the medical information that tells us that it was all just a concept that certain powerful, monetarily connected people wanted more money, want more money still, and want to be in control of the situation. And they don't want individual liberty. They don't want individual businesses that thrive or fail or drop out. That's all okay. We just want the chance to compete as people. They want to take away competition. They want what they want.
You know, just like in Epic Camp, you didn't hear that there were 250,000 of us there in Canberra, and it wasn't like just in that one spot. You didn't hear it, but in the same way, right now we've got people like you say, the farmers in Holland, then Germany. You've got uprisings in Spain. You've got people uprising in Poland, all over the world. People, and you don't hear it in the mainstream media. The revolution is going on, but because it's not been publicized, because it's being censored, it's happening right now, right this moment. There's a mass uprising, I believe, but I think one of the insidious things about being censored, like we have, is that it is a kind of death that you disappear. It doesn't mean that things aren't happening. It's just not. They've been very effective with their censorship. So it's very important that we connect and keep the communication. But we were successful in getting the word out about the vaccine. We've been successful, I think, in getting awareness about early treatment, and we have to be successful about this coming global tyranny. And people are standing up. The farmers are our food and our life, and we need to be aware and we need to support them and make such a big. It seems like, see, I saw protests, with 500,000 in Canberra, the similar numbers in Melbourne at the peak. And it's completely ignored by mainstream media. So it's as if it's not happening, but it is happening.
Well, guess what the mainstream media must therefore want? They must want an unopposed an unopposed digitalization of everything. They want an unopposed digitalization of every thought you have.
And
every dollar, Australian dollar or Canadian dollar or American dollar, they want to know where it's going, why it's going, and what the political views are of the person who's spending it.
Yeah.
And we're fighting that like heck here in Canada. And we better be fighting that in every country, is to be against this forced digitalization of our economic activity.
The only reason they withdrew, they stopped doing the bank seizures and stuff, the closing of accounts, was because when the rest of the world saw what was happening, they went, oh shit, I've got to get my money out of Canada. This is no longer a safe jurisdiction. So there was starting to be capital flight. Trudeau, I should say, didn't backflip out of the goodness of his heart. He did it because people were debanking, people were withdrawing capital from Canada. Ultimately, this is what we'll need to do. We'll have to become non-compliant with their systems. And the biggest system of control is our money. And the head of this octopus, I think, wears a banker's hat. So until we fix, and this is how our social contract has also been completely destroyed. We call it inflation and cost of living, but we have things that we have to deal with. But I don't think it's going to come from our success. Will not come from marching in ever greater numbers in the streets, but from finding alternatives to the corrupt controllers and withdrawing our consent.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in here and say, look, the lawyers have made pretty crappy board members of many, many hospitals. think we can agree with that. They've done a piss poor job of forcing protocols and circumstances and lack of ability for doctors to be individual doctors. Okay, doctors are still willing to be doctors. How about the lawyers do to address what Paul is just talking about? We need the lawyers to get busier still at opposing digitalization of money, because at that point, when the next thing goes wrong, the people won't be able to withdraw their money out of Canada, because Canada will have some kind of digital recourse to just hold your money right there. And you might see it in 5 years and you might not. So, hey, lawyers, you like free flow of money, right? You should. Help us protect our own free control and assets that we should have control of as individuals. We will not have control of it as individuals if this worldwide fiscal pandemic goes through. This worldwide fiscal pandemic with the IHR and all of these things that are being promoted, every citizen in every country of the world, get every member of parliament in every country to oppose it, and do not allow a globalistic control of the monetary system. I'm just a little country doctor saying that, but I said I've become a scientist. I've started to study political science, and I've studied these points when it comes to economics and individual liberty. Dear world, grab it by the throat. Stop it. Keep your nations sovereign. Keep your nations separate from world government economic malaise. I have to go soon, gentlemen. It's getting a little later in the evening for me.
Try to wrap it up there. I was actually going to say, Jeff, one last thing to say, but you just said it. I just want to say, I've been watching you for a long time. You give me a lot of courage. I really admire your courage, brother. And it's been an honor to have you on. And hopefully we'll have you on again. If you know anyone else who would
We'd
like
love to talk to Brian Bridle or Roger Hodgkinson. He's a great hero of mine, and I don't know how to get a hold of him.
You and Roger would have a gang up good time together. I can tell that, Paul.
Yeah, well, if they get in touch, that'd be great. But Dr. Shoemaker, it has been an honor to have you on, and I wish you the best in your fight, and I wish your country the best in the fight.
Absolutely. We'll get 1.4 million out to something ourselves someday soon, I think.
Take care, brother.
Yeah.
Understand.
Thank you, everybody. Bye, Dr. Paul.
Feel sorry for me, I'm a victim. The world owes me. The whole world owes me. Feel sorry for me, I'm a victim.